Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this very important conversation on moving the fashion industry toward more eco-friendly materials and practices. Before I get into this conversation, I wanted to introduce myself to you. So I have co-founded an open footwear brand called CHUPPS. We make essentially slippers, sandals, but with a strong focus on technology to make these products biodegradable. And we're currently in the R&D stage, but hopefully we will be able to get a product that is eco-friendly and comfortable and fashionable at the same time. So that's a brief introduction about myself. We'll now get into how one can move the fashion industry towards more eco-friendly materials and practices. Before we get into this, why is this a problem? Why do we need to move the fashion industry toward more eco-friendly practices? It's widely known that the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries globally. And a lot of the clothes that are produced end up in landfill because of overproduction that then cannot be sold to the consumer. And most of these clothes are then dumped away. Even in the production of cloth, 1 kilogram of cotton fabric requires about 20,000 liters of water to be made, used up when it's being made. And this results in water scarcity in many regions. These are problems that not many people think about while producing the cloth, while buying the cloth, and while disposing the cloth. But these are problems that come to light when all of this fabric ends up in landfill and doesn't decompose, just lies there. So it's very important for the fashion industry as a whole to recognize this problem and try and take small steps to move into a more sustainable direction. And then how can we move into a more sustainable direction? There are several eco-friendly materials available, and I just took a walk around the room to see how many factories, how many manufacturers actually use these eco-friendly materials. And it's not surprising that very, very few are aware of them, very, very few use them, but they are available. And why should one try to use eco-friendly materials? Most of these materials, like organic cotton, they have a lower environmental impact than the traditional materials that are used. For example, organic cotton is grown without harmful pesticides, doesn't harm the soil health, doesn't harm biodiversity. There are recycled fibers that are available for people to use. The recycling industry, however, is in the midst of a controversy at this minute whether or not it is environmentally friendly to recycle. But those materials are available for people to use. Even biodegradable options. I used to run a handbag brand earlier in Hong Kong, and this brand used to use environmentally friendly materials such as fabric made from pineapple, made from cactus, made from teak leaves, and all of this fabric had a very low environmental impact. But the awareness amongst the consumers and amongst the producers of this fabric is very, very low. So I think it's important as brands, as retailers, to raise awareness of this fabric. Even manufacturers, when you're offering leather as an alternative, it is extremely important to offer an eco-friendly alternative. Whether or not the retailer chooses to use that fabric is their choice, but they should be given the choice. And as a manufacturer, factory owner, you can offer that choice while getting into a contract with these retailers. So I think, we have a lot of startups that are investing in technology to make materials eco-friendly and to test them for wear and tear, for tensile strength, to ensure that there is no compromise in the functionality, in the aesthetic look of these materials. But all we need is awareness amongst the industry to to go and try these materials out and to give feedback. It's a circular process, right? The materials, if nobody uses them, you don't get feedback, you can't innovate, you can't make them better. So only if brands, if manufacturers, retailers try these fabrics out, are you able to close the loop, give feedback, and constantly innovate. But there is a lot of merit in using these fabrics and helping the fashion industry reduce its environmental impact. It's not only materials. So there are a lot of innovative practices to sustainability that manufacturers and factory owners can incorporate in their working. So it's not like stop using leather, stop using cotton, switch to organic cotton, switch to eco-friendly alternatives to leather. No, you continue using what you do, but innovate in the process of manufacturing. So there are zero waste manufacturing techniques that can be used, where in your design you reduce wastage from the cuttings, from the trims, you incorporate designs where you reuse the waste. Very recently, I visited shoe manufacturers in India, and it was extremely interesting to see one of the manufacturers making rubber soles. And whatever waste was being produced in the process of making rubber soles, they took the waste back and they made recycled rubber soles with it. So they essentially are a zero waste factory in terms of the rubber that they use. Each part of that rubber is reused to make recycled soles. So it was really heartening to see manufacturers innovating and reusing the waste that their factories generate. There is also upcycling, which converts discarded or unused materials into high quality products, into new products, and it is another very important tool to promote sustainability in the manufacturing process. And finally, we have circular economy models, which encourages reduce, reuse, recycle. H&M has this take back initiative that allows people to bring used clothes to them, and then they will recycle it appropriately. I recently read about Crocs that has invited people to bring their used Crocs to them, and they will refurbish and provide you with charms, etc., to make your Crocs as good as new, so you could use it for a longer time. So the larger brands, there is positive headway in this area, because larger brands are moving towards adopting these circular and sustainable practices as part of their regular functioning. So that's really heartening and really good to know. There are eco-friendly materials available, there are eco-friendly processes available, but why don't we see them becoming mainstream? There are a lot of challenges involved in doing this, and I've witnessed these challenges firsthand, right? As a small startup that ran a sustainable, eco-friendly handbag business, I think cost was one of the key issues that came my way. All of these wonderful materials come at such a premium to their traditional counterparts. So whether you talk about cactus leather, whether you talk about alternative fabric made from pineapple fiber. There was a fabric that I used that was made from coconut water. All of these are extremely high to procure. The cost is extremely high to procure these fabrics, and that acts as a huge entry barrier into this industry. Now, why is the cost high? Simply because the startups have invested so much in the technology and in the processes to bring this material to a stage where it can be used, that process itself is bringing the cost high. But there are a lot who've crossed that stage and now are looking at scaling up. And I think once they scale up, we will be able to see the cost come at par or at a slight premium to traditional leather, to traditional cotton and other fabrics that are used by the fashion industry. But again, the only way to bring this cost down is to use that fabric. If it's not going to be used, if there's no demand, it's going to be very hard to bring that cost down. There is also issues with availability of this fabric that one should be aware of. all of these, brands are just starting out. They manufacture, test batch. They want people to use it. It's not as readily available as the traditional fabrics. So the more we use it, the more the manufacturers get to scale it up and produce larger quantities. So currently availability is a huge challenge. There are supply chain complexities. Not everyone in the supply chain is aware of these fabrics. So if you go to a factory and say, I want to make a bag with cork fabric, a lot of times I've been asked, what is cork? Is it similar to leather? Is the process of making it similar to leather? So I think even within the manufacturing community, there needs to be a lot of awareness raised on these sustainable fabrics for it to actually come out and become mainstream. And such kind of events, it's wonderful that we are having these events and we are having these conversations at these events, because it's extremely necessary to bring these conversations out to the mainstream, to all of you, so you are aware of the challenges involved, of the options available there. So when you make your buying decisions, you can make an informed decision. So we spoke about the fabrics available, we spoke about the processes available, we spoke about the challenges. How do we overcome these challenges? And I'm a huge advocate of collaborations and of working together. And I've always said this, leather has a history. Cotton, the traditional way of making cotton, right? It has a history. Today, we are innovating on these processes to make it more environmentally friendly. All of the players in this need to come together and need to work together to raise awareness. There has to be industry collaboration to make this happen. Fashion Pact is one such example. It's a coalition of fashion brands that collaborates on initiatives to fight climate change. We also have the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, which is active in Hong Kong, which helps buyers source sustainability, spreads awareness on sustainable sourcing. So industry collaborations are a very, very unique and important way to address this issue. The other is supplier engagement. So we have the Better Cotton initiatives, which collaborates with brands, retailers, and suppliers to promote sustainable cotton sourcing. So if there are buyers in this room, please look out for these initiatives, these supplier engagement programs. If you are not aware that there are alternatives, people are there to guide you. You may choose not to use that alternative for whatever commercial reason, but make a conscious decision. Know that there is an alternative and then choose the traditional alternative. Sorry, but at some point in your sourcing and buying decisions, you should be able to choose the more sustainable alternative. Sorry. And one also needs, right? There are individual players that are making these small steps towards sustainability. There are industry actors that are coming together to collaborate to promote this. But without a conducive regulatory and policy environment, it's going to be very, very hard to make this mainstream, to make it as popular as leather is, as traditional materials are. And I think a policy thrust, right? The government, not just the government of this city, but internationally, governments need to come together to promote this, this initiative and to have positive policy measures to encourage manufacturers to undertake this activity. Sorry, there's just something irritating my throat. Another key to making this possible is consumer awareness. We've all heard that customer is king. I'm not sure if we have water. Thank you. We've all heard that customer is king, and that if the customer asks for something and asks for something repeatedly, the brands, the manufacturers need to follow suit. Unfortunately, customers are such a diverse set and such a widely spread set that it's very, very difficult for them to come together and to raise their voice in a way that it will make a meaningful change. But it is happening. I have come across customers who've been asking about where the product is made, what are the manufacturing practices followed there, are the workers treated fairly, are they paid their wages, are they paid for overtime? And I think these are very, very important questions. A small voice raised will translate into a larger change, but it's important, all of us, our brand owners, buyers, own buying houses, manufacturers, but we are also consumers. So when we buy, do we ask the right questions? I mean, I know it's very difficult to walk into H&M or any other of these fast fashion brands, Zara, etc., and ask them where was this made and what was the sourcing. But if we ask repeatedly, I think there will be a positive change in the industry, and that is what we need to do. As consumers, we need to be aware. As brands, we need to raise that awareness. So if you're selling, say, a shoe, for example, let the customer be aware of the carbon that's emitted while making that shoe. Let them make an informed decision on whether to buy or not. But as a responsible manufacturer, it is your duty to produce that information for the customer to use. There's also a business case to sustainability. And I'll give you an example of my brand, right? We conducted a life cycle analysis for a slider that we make, for a slipper that we make, and we found that the largest piece of work that emits carbon is electricity. And we are now working very closely with our manufacturers to reduce electricity consumption, to see how we can optimize processes to reduce power consumption, and also whether we can source clean power. Now, all of that will eventually translate into cost savings for the brand, and that can then be passed on to the consumer as a benefit. And this is something that we need to think about, right? Do we want to continue doing things the traditional way, or do we want to ask the right questions and make a sustainable change in the way we do things? There is also improved brand reputation and increased customer loyalty. And all of these benefits don't trickle in overnight. They trickle in with time, but you need to have the patience and the perseverance to go through this process. Yeah, I think that was it from me. Thanks for attending this conversation. And in conclusion, I want to leave you with this thought. You will find data online to say a particular process is brilliant, is environmentally friendly. You will find data to say that is not. There is every piece of data available on the internet. Eventually, as a manufacturer, as a brand, and as a consumer, you need to make a conscious decision about which way to go. And that is something that only you can do. I think all of us need to begin with conscious decisions, and that comes with having a conscience. So let's work together to move the fashion industry in a more sustainable, in a more sensible direction to where we are now. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinita, for your sharing. Please remain on stage, and we will move on to the Q&A session. So if there are any questions from the audience, please raise your hand, and we will acknowledge you accordingly.
Hi, thank you for your question. Thank you for your presentation. It's very inspiring. Actually, I am as a consumer, I am also really interested to find out something really from real cotton, organic material, because I have allergy. Yeah. So you know why I'm asking that question. But at the same time, in the market, there's not much choice, or it's not easy for the end user like me to find out the suitable products. So will you mind to give me some advice, or how can an end user can also participate in your plan, and how to promote the eco-environment or eco-friendly materials?
Sure. No, great question. Thank you. It's a very relevant question today, because there are two separate issues that we are facing. We're talking about fashion now, but even in the food industry. One is those that are allergic to certain substances, certain chemicals used in the regular manufacturing process. And second is someone who is not allergic, but is making a choice to go eco-friendly by choosing to buy a certain fabric. And these are two very, very separate set of consumers. And there has to be data provided and we've had these conversations via a scan code, on the product tag, where the person can actually find information on chemicals that go in, even on the yarn. What are the chemicals used to coat the yarn, and can someone be allergic to those chemicals? In your specific case, have you, there are a few things that can be done, but it has to start with the change that you bring about. So have you tried writing to the brands that you use normally for information on allergens? I found that if you go to the counter and tell them, they have this allergen sheet that they share with you that you can see what actually goes into making the product. I've seen this for food. I've not seen this for textile as much or fashion as much, but it's a very, very relevant point and a great conversation to start. So I think to begin with, writing to the brand and holding them accountable, right? And they do respond. Today, there's a lot of focus on what the consumer asks for, responding to customer queries. They should respond because social media is just explosive, right? You put a post and say, this brand really didn't care about me and didn't bother about my allergies, and that's a huge reputational damage for them. So to start by asking the right questions will bring about the change. That is what I think.
Thank you for your question. Any more question from the audience? Once again, thank you, Vinita.